The impeachment process against Dilma Rousseff, the president of Brazil, began in late 2015 and continued through 2016. An impeachment request against Rousseff was accepted by Eduardo Cunha, then president of the Chamber of Deputies, on the 2nd of December 2015. Rousseff has been charged for responsibility crimes in the execution of her duties, including administrative misconduct and disregarding the federal budget, in violation of Article 85, items v via the Brazilian Constitution, and the Fiscal Responsibility Law, Article 36. However, a large number of scholars and witnesses during the hearing phase of the process, stating it is not related to responsibility crimes. In course of the process, 2 of the 6 supplemental budget decrees signed by Rousseff without approval of Congress were considered neutral from the fiscal perspective and removed of the charges. According to the impeachment request, Rousseff was also accused of omission concerning irregularities in Petrobras that, facing serious facts investigated by Operation Car Wash while occupying the office of President of Brazil, failed to fend off the suspects. Also, according to the report, the fact is aggravated by Rousseff having been president of the board of directors in the Brazilian oil company when the investigated facts occurred, including the controversial acquisition of Pasadena refining system, cited on page 3 of the impeachment request. According to this request, her omission would indicate criminal responsibility. However, these charges of omission were not included in the process, since a request indicting the involvement of Rousseff in the suspicious purchase of Pasadena had archived by the lawful impediment to investigate the president for previous act to its mandate. Background: tax evasion and wrongdoing at Petrobras. Alleged graft occurred while President Rousseff was still part of the board of directors of state-owned energy company Petrobras from 2003 to 2010. 1 million Brazilians protested in the streets calling for Rousseff's impeachment. No evidence that Rousseff herself was involved in the scheme has been found, and she has denied any prior knowledge of the graft. Further investigation found that there were various offshore accounts and collections of VAT that were held by those involved in the controversy. In February 2014, an investigation by Brazilian federal police called Operation Car Wash placed Petrobras at the center of what may be the largest corruption scandal in Brazil's history. On the 14th of November 2014, police raids across 6 Brazilian states netted prominent Brazilian politicians and businessmen, including some Petrobras directors, who were placed under investigation in regards to suspicious contracts worth $22 billion. Under Rousseff, the government of Brazil has also been accused of carrying out fiscal peddling, an accounting maneuver through which the government gives the false impression that it received more money than was spent. The government failed to provide funds to public and private banks that make payments for a number of public expense programs, including social assistance programs like Bolsa Familia, forcing the banks to finance programs without receiving government compensation. The government's apparent motive was to improve its fiscal outcomes for the years 2012 to 2014. The Tribunal de Contas da União, in a unanimous decision, considered this operation a violation of fiscal responsibility. TCU is an auxiliary of the legislative body and has no legal power. However, the decision put the National Congress under pressure to begin the process of impeachment of President Rousseff. Political context: Rousseff was re-elected in the 2014 general election, winning 51.64% of the votes. The election was one of the most contentious presidential elections in the country's history. After being sworn in on the 1st of January 2015, she started her second term weakened, mainly due to the national recession that started in 2014 and allegations of corruption, which led to a 9% approval rating in a survey by IBOP held in July of that year, the lowest approval rating ever for the president. On the 15th of March 2015, several protests began, gathering hundreds of thousands of Brazilians across the country to demand the impeachment of the resignation of Rousseff, among other issues. Beyond the violations of the budget law, Rousseff and her government were increasingly tainted by corruption allegations. The president of the Chamber of Deputies, Eduardo Cunha, was investigated in Operation Car Wash, under allegations of receiving bribes and keeping secret Swiss bank accounts. Consequently, Cunha was in danger of losing his mandate as the Ethics Council of the Chamber moved a lawsuit against him. Rumors emerged about attempts to agreement between the Brazilian Democratic Movement Party and the Workers' Party in order to end this process, which he strongly denied. When the Workers' Party announced its support for the wedge term loss on the Board of Ethics, he would have accepted the request for impeachment as an instrument of blackmail. In his defense, Cunha said the receipt of the complaint has clearly defined reasons. When it talks about direct participation in the conduct described in what were then budget decrees, I haven't issued and I will not issue any judgment on the accusation against the President of the Republic, even more if it's a personal matter. I'm just sticking to facts typified. He also stressed that Rousseff signed 6 decrees with additional credits, which increased the 2015 federal spending in non-compliance with the annual budget law and without approval of the Congress. In turn, Rousseff denied any attempt to forge a deal to save Cunha and get rid of impeachment, as well as agreements to interfere with the Ethics Board in exchange for the approval of a CPMF, which was another great need of the government. At a news conference on the 2nd of December, she said that she never would accept or agree with any kind of bargain. After the pronouncement of the president, Cunha said Rousseff lied to the nation when she said she would not participate in any bargain and that the government had much to explain to the country. Cunha claimed he was not aware of negotiations and that he had not met Jack Wagner. Declaring himself against the Workers' Party, he said he would rather not have the 3 votes from the party in the Council of Ethics. Comments by specialists and public opinion political scientists heard by Agência Brasil on December 2015 commented on the political crisis. They stated that Rousseff's inability to negotiate with Congress, in addition to the political system, which allows the fragmenting and great number of political parties in Brazil, caused a loss of governability. Moreover, the opposition confronted Rousseff since elections on 2014, refuting the electoral results and calling for a recount of votes. Her campaign accounts was also disputed and the impeachment threat has destabilized the government. However, the outbreak of the process could be beneficial for Rousseff, who would be free from blackmail and could potentially reorganize her government. Political scientists believed Cunha could lose his mandate and that the opposition would try to push the process in Congress for 2016 in order to mitigate the electoral ecstasy and active revenge that was the host of the application. In CNT, MDA polls performed in March March 2015, only 10.8% of Brazilians approved of Rousseff's government and 59.7% wanted her impeached. In July 2015, this number had risen to 62.8%. By April 2016, in polls performed by Datafolha Institute, 61% of Brazilians believed that Rousseff should have been impeached. Request for impeachment. Since 2012, a total of 37 requests for impeachment of President Dilma Rousseff have been presented to the Chamber of Deputies. However, only one request was accepted by then-President of the Chamber Eduardo Cunha. The accepted request for impeachment was submitted by former Congressman and attorney Elio Bicudo and attorneys Miguel Real Jr. and Janaína Pascoal. The request was based on allegations of omission concerning irregularities in Petrobras, fiscal responsibility crimes, and budgetary mismanagement. Omission. In the course of Operation Car Wash, many illegal and suspicious operations were investigated, including the purchase of the Pasadena refinery by Petrobras, a business that has proved extremely unfavorable to Brazil. According to the impeachment request, the financial losses were higher than 700 million reals. Rousseff was president of the board of directors of Petrobras and gave as excuse a mistake concerning a contractual clause. According to the report, the president insisted in thesis that the allegations would be a kind of coup, mere attempt to weaken Petrobras, always emphasizing its expertise in economy and energy sector. Namely, the president insisted on the company's financial health. She stepped down in Petrobras only in February 2015, when the situation was already untenable. The report also denounces a corrupt scheme involving shady deals of former President Lula, who intermediated business of the Brazilian construction company Norberto Odebrecht in Cuba and Angola, which Rousseff had knowledge that were for the purpose of money laundering of corruption at Petrobras. Some international companies were chosen to be encouraged and, thereafter, participating in unrealistic bids, drain the state-owned company, giving back much of the values through seemingly illicit donations. In statements taken from accused in Operation Car Wash, was found that Lula and Dilma knew of the bribery scheme in Petrobras. Fiscal responsibility crimes. Rousseff has added in the years 2014 and 2015, 6 unnumbered decrees that resulted in the provision of additional credits to social programs with electoral purposes, without authorization from Congress. These values were in the amount of 18.5 billion reals and were contracted in official financial institutions without the necessary legislative authorization, even with the target set not being complied in the Fiscal Responsibility Law and the Annual Budgetary Law. To obtain these additional credits, the target of 2014 was reduced by the end of 2014 by 67 billion reals, at the request of the president. The same conduct of the accused was committed in 2015. Rousseff, by means of decrees authorized in the years 2014 and 2015, the opening credit, disregarding the annual budgetary law and the federal constitution, precisely to allow the provision of additional resources when it was known that the primary superávit target in the budget forecast was not being fulfilled, and would not be fulfilled. Illegal practices of accounting disinformation and the called fiscal peddling. In 2011 and 2014, the Union has held illegal credit operations from no transfer of funds to the national financial system entities controlled by the state. That practice was taken from financial advances made by official financial institutions, such as Caixa Econômica Federal and Banco do Brasil, for finance social programs of responsibility of the federal government. These transactions were reported in 2015 by Tribunal de Contas da UNIO and, according to the report, is aimed at election results. The union contracted Caixa Econômica Federal and Banco do Brasil as operators by federal government social programs. For this purpose, the union should pass along directly from the National Treasury Secretary account the necessary resources for the realization of programs each month. More precisely, would be obliged to transfer to the financial institutions the equivalent values for the equalization of interest rates, expenditures and legal transfers, but the government has not done these refunds, and the contracted financial system entities made payments to programs beneficiaries with own resources and hence promoted the credit constitution in his favor against the union. This procedure is a form of mutual credit, or similar operation, and in accordance with the Fiscal Responsibility Law, Art. 36, is prohibited to carry out credit operations between a state financial institution and the member of the federation that controls it, as the borrower. The total balance of these liabilities by the end of August 2014 was 1.74 billion reals, of an amount of 7.8 billion reals spent on subsidies in the programs between 2009 and 2014. Only 1.6 billion reals was transferred by the union. By the end of 2014, Rousseff sent to the National Congress the PLN number 360/2014 to change the budgetary directives law aimed at modifying the rules of the primary superávit, thus has demonstrated knowledge of the results of the public accounts and which has taken the necessary steps to regularize them. However, he did just to meet your interest, as sort of avoid being accused of a crime committed for not meet the fiscal targets set out in law. Legal infringements. Both the Federal Constitution and Article 4 of Law 1079/50 established that give rise the impediment of the President the fact that attempt against probity and administration and against the budget law are crimes of responsibility against the budget law, or order or authorize the opening of credit in disagreement with the limits set by the Senate, not well founded in budget law or in additional credit law or in observance of legal prescription, and fail to promote or to order the full settlement of credit operations in anticipation of budget revenue, including related interest and other charges, until the end of the fiscal period. Therefore, there is a political violation, which may lead to the impeachment by legislative trial, and there is a civil offense, which entails indemnities and mandate cassation by the judiciary. When the author of conduct is the President, also commit crime of responsibility, pursuant to Art. 10 of Law N. 1079/50, amended by Law No. 10,028/2000. Process in Congress. Acceptance of the request for impeachment. There were 37 requests for impeachment filed with the Chamber of Deputies by September 2015 against Dilma Rousseff, but the President's home only received the written request of Elio Bicudo and the lawyers Miguel Real Jr. and Janaína Pascoal. The social movement pro-impeachment decided to join Bicudo's request. It also had the support of parliamentarians and civil society, which organized a petition in support of the impeachment of the President of the Republic. Lawyers, in the document presented to the House, tried to associate Dilma Rousseff with Operation Car Wash, cited failure in case of corruption, investigated influence peddling against former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and fiscal peddling. In addition, it contributed to support the request of 6 decrees signed by the President in the fiscal year of 2015 in disagreement with the law guidelining the budget, which were published without permission of the Congress. voting the request admissibility in Chamber of Deputies. After the acceptance of the request, a special committee was formed in the Chamber of Deputies to decide on its admissibility. It began with the testimony of the authors of the request, followed by a presentation of Rousseff's defense. Meanwhile, street protests for and against the impeachment occurred periodically throughout the country. The committee's report was favorable to impeaching the president. 38 deputies approved the report while 27 did not. On the 17th of April 2016, the Chamber of Deputies concluded a general vote for the admission of the impeachment process. 367 members voted for impeachment while 137 voted against, 7 abstained and 2 were absent from the session. The internal rules of the House stated that the process would be admitted only if it received at least 342 votes for, between the 513 sitting members. On the following day, the President of the Chamber, Eduardo Cunha, delivered the process to the Senate, Upper Legislative House, which followed the procedure and judged the case. On the 5th of May 2016, Teori Zavascki, judge of Supreme Federal Court, decided that Eduardo Cunha must step down from the presidency of the Chamber of Deputies and suspend his mandate, because he is facing a corruption trial. The decision was later endorsed by all 11 judges of court and has not affected the process of impeachment against Dilma Rousseff. Voting the process opening in Senate after the vote held in the chamber on the 17th of April to allow the charges against the president to be presented to the Senate. The process was delivered by Cunha to the Senate and confirmed with a 55-22 vote on the 12th of May, in a section that lasted more than 20 hours, resulting in the suspension of Rousseff's presidential powers and duties up to 180 days. During this period, while the judgment of the process occurs, Rousseff's vice president Michel Temer will serve as acting president. In the Brazilian political system, the president and vice president form a single electoral coalition. However, the terms are constitutionally separate. Michel Temer was president of the Chamber of Deputies during the Fernando Henrique Cardoso presidential mandate, from 1995 to 2002. Mr. Temer is a member of PMDB, which declared moving to opposition to Dilma Rousseff government on March 2016. According to some newspapers such as The Guardian, for those desperate for change, Temer represents salvation. Others, more concerned about the country's fragile democracy, believe he is the perpetrator of a coup. A separate proposal to impeach Michel Temer as acting president and vice president has been made. Public Opinion Survey and Economics. A CNT-MDA poll published on 8 June 2016 indicates that 11.3% of Brazilians approved and 28% censured the acting government of President Temer. For 30.2% of respondents, Temer's government is ordinary, while 30.5% not answered. The survey revealed that 46.6% of Brazilians believed that the corruption in government Temer could be equal to that experienced in government Rousseff. Also, according to the poll, 28.3% believed the corruption could be lessened, while 18.6% estimated that it could be even greater. Regarding to lawfulness in the process of impeachment, 61.5% agreed with the conduction of the process, 33.3% answered negatively and 5.2% not answered. According to the survey agency, the CNT-MDA heard 2,002 people in 137 municipalities in 25 federative units from 2 to 5 June. The margin of error was 2.2 percentage points, with 95% of reliability. A poll of Ipsos Consulting, by early July 2016, concluded that 16% of Brazilians had preferred Temer definitely in office. For 20%, Rousseff should be acquitted and reconducted to office to conclude her 4-year mandate. 52% answered that both Dilma Rousseff, whoever that assume the command of the nation, must call new elections for president. However, anticipate elections can only occur with the approval of a large majority of Congress. Dilma and Rousseff resign simultaneously. That would be unlikely. Otherwise, both could be removed from their offices, depending on the outcome of a lawsuit filed in Superior Electoral Court by the PSD. Party of acute CIO Neves, then defeated candidate in the presidential elections of 2014, claiming that there was electoral crime in the political campaign of the alliance Rousseff-Dilma, with donations made by companies investigated in the Operation Car Wash. In the poll, 12% were undecided and not answered. Were heard 1,200 people in 72 Brazilian municipalities. The margin of error was 3 percentage points. According to the National Confederation of Industry, the Industry Confidence Index reached 47.3 points on July 2016, from 45.7 in June, 10.1 points higher than July 2015. According to Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, the national index of consumer prices brought in Brazil decreased from 0.78% in May 2016 to 0.35% in June 2016, the lowest index since August 2015.